This is the Enjoyer Podcast. I'm your host, James Dixon.
When they say that death and taxes are the two unavoidable facts of life, they really mean property taxes. You can avoid a lot of other forms of tax using schemes, using smarts, using smart accountants, but you'll never truly own your home. You could buy the home in cash the day you buy it, pay property taxes on it the next 50 years, pass it down to your daughter, and then she'll pay property taxes on it for the next 50 years. If the king stay king in life, that's because property taxes guarantee that we render every year what's owed to the king. The king didn't get all that money by working hard. He got it by forcing you to rent your own land from him. And that's what property taxes are. Money sent to the king for the right to occupy his property, your property. And this all carries a fundamental assumption, which is that the land is always the king's land. It's never truly yours. Real estate means that the king really owns your estate. But we're Americans. We're not just enjoyers of Michigan, we are freeborn men. Next year, we celebrate America's 250th anniversary on July 4th, and then we vote to save our state on November 3rd. Yet when it comes to property taxes, we're all still subjects of the king. Except these days, it's not the King of England. Now it's the city administrator. He's not quite all-powerful like the king, but he does have enough power. Enough power to send men with guns to seize your home from you if property taxes are not paid, if Caesar is not rendered unto. My guest today, Karla Wagner, wants to upset the apple cart on property taxes. She's working to make a 2026 ballot amendment, a ballot initiative for a constitutional amendment that would eliminate the property tax in Michigan and end the king's ownership of your property. Karla Wagner is head of a group called Axe My Tax, and she's an enjoyer of Michigan. Karla, welcome to the Enjoyer Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. This is a wonderful opportunity for me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking the time to do this today. Let's start at the very beginning. Who is Karla Wagner? What is Axe My Tax?
Okay, so I'm just a normal person, right? I have a builder's license. I have a real estate license.
Where do you live in Michigan?
I live in Rockford, Michigan, which is just north of Grand Rapids, so on the west side of the state.
Okay.
So I've been basically a self-employed person all of my life. I did work for a factory right out of high school, but I have been, like I said, in the building industry, real estate industry. I prepared tax returns for like 12 years. I worked at a bank for a short time, so I had my securities license, so I could do stock trades and financial planning for people.
Wow.
I was a fully uniformed volunteer sheriff's deputy for a little while, so just a little tiny taste of law enforcement. I have a little restaurant now attached to this antique shop that's behind me, so retail, restaurant, So I cover a wide range of industries, and I think that's why property taxes have always been a part of everything I do, right? Because it becomes a cost of everything, right? We have to factor it in. I think it wasn't really until COVID when I was deemed non-essential. Pretty much everything I did was deemed non-essential. And so the revenue stops, but the bills still need to be paid. And then on top of that, I have elderly parents who are, they're at that age, 88 and 87. They can't afford to stay where they are, but they can't afford to move. Why? And let me talk about that a minute. Why can't that happen, right? Because elderly people, if they've lived in their house a long time, their property taxes were relatively low and they do creep up every year. It was 1%. Your property value would go up 1%, 2%. But now it's going up the max of 5% a year, which we have the Headley Amendment here in Michigan, which caps your property value from going up no more than 5% a year. A lot of other states don't have that, man. And we are making homeless people left and right that we don't take care of, right? But these seniors, they can't afford to stay because of the rising property value increases their taxes, but they also can't afford to move Because if they buy something at today's prices, they're probably going to pay more property taxes than what they're paying right now. So we have seniors that can't move. As a real estate agent, I haven't sold a house to people younger than 35 in 5 years. Because,
Holy cow.
and it's not that they can't afford the payment, right? What you pay the bank is the mortgage.
Right.
Your insurance and your property tax is the escrow, right?
Right.
You escrow that, meaning you pay the bank every month, but they only pay your taxes twice a year, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so, and you might pay the bank every month, but they might pay your insurance once a year.
Right.
So that's escrow. So people are calling, young people can afford the payment on the mortgage, on the bank loan, because that's going to stay the same for 30 years, right? What they can't afford is the ever increasing insurance and property tax. And so they go and look at a house that, hey, this house is $250,000, but these people have lived in it. The prior owners have lived in it for 20 years. Guess what happens when this new young couple comes to buy that house? Now they're paying $350,000, and the property taxes are going to get jacked up because the cap on caps.
Right.
What those people were paying because they bought the house 20 years ago has no relevance to what the new people are going to pay. And then they go, holy cow, we can afford the payment to the bank. We cannot afford the property tax. They can't.
And
so,
if you can't afford the escrow, you can't afford the house.
Exactly.
Which means you remain a renter.
Exactly. And what happens, James, when you are a renter all of your life, you will never build equity.
Yeah.
Right? You talk about people I'm sure you've heard of people that have taken out a home equity loan. Hey, my daughter's getting married. I'm going to take out a little home equity loan, or my kid's going to college. I'm going to take out a home equity loan, right? You will never have that equity to count on. You will never build equity. You will never build generational wealth. You won't be able to have a house to give to your grandkids or whatever else. There will never be anything to pass down to them, right? So
as long as you're locked out of that market.
Yes. And you know what what renters don't understand is you're renting. So you think, oh, I'm not really paying property tax anyway. So
yeah, you are.
I know, but they will go and vote yes on every millage. Renters, college kids that live at home with their parents, they go and vote yes on every stinking millage. And then guess what? Then they complain that their rent went up. They go, well, my landlord, he is a mean, nasty man because he just raised my rent.
They must be greedy. It's corporate greed. It's individual greed. It is.
And it's like, no, you raised your own rent. When you voted yes on all of those millages, you raised his property tax, and Economics 101 says he's going to raise your rent, guaranteed.
Because you didn't vote yes, meaning I want to pay more. You voted yes for your landlord to pay more.
Yes.
Which does it affects you in the end. And I think we've gotten into a very immature place in how we view money and where it comes from.
You're nice calling it immature. I say selfish.
Yeah.
They want
you have
it
a lot
for
of
free.
people who are not invested in the common fate and the common future of the place, saying, oh yeah, that sounds good. Let's just approve all these millages. Government says they need it, right?
Yeah. Well, how many of us trust the government anymore?
I cannot count myself in that number. Tell us how the Axe My Tax idea came about.
It came about because with all the industries that am involved in, I just kept connecting the dots. And I said, something has to be done. You know, I started here, and I don't even like to talk about this because people think I'm a wackadoodle, right? You started hearing about the 2030 agenda. You started hearing about the World Economic Forum. We saw our own governor going to Davos, right? You know, in Sweden, whatever. You start and you start paying attention to more things. And I'm like, the number one, the most important thing that we can do for ourselves here in Michigan is to eliminate the government's ability to tax and take our property. If we have no home ownership, if we don't own the land our home, our farm, or our business sits on, we're
Yeah.
toast. We're toast, right? Because what are they talking about now? Affordable housing. But what are you going to do to make my house affordable? We're going to
Bingo.
build it because I'm in the home building, I'm in the home building business. They talk about all of this money. Oh, there's so much money to build affordable housing. What does Governor Whitmer say? We have to build 11,000 more affordable housing units. Traverse City, every county is being approached.
It's in Ann Arbor too. They're building absolute garbage and filling in every field with these McMansion just slop that they know 20 people are going to live in. It's not a home that a normal person's going to buy.
And do you think
what this stuff is?
And is it going to raise the value of your house? It's not going to raise the value of your house. It's going to raise your property taxes because when you think about person per person, like I pay quite a bit. I pay $7,200 a year on my I live in an old farmhouse. Okay. Yeah. I live in an old farmhouse on some acres. I pay $7,200 a year, but as a renter might pay $400 a year in property tax to use all the same services I'm paying $7,200 for because I'm 64 years old and I live in a house that I've worked for all of my life. I get penalized for being a homeowner. I get penalized for working hard because I have to pay $7,200 to enjoy or use the same services that a renter can use for $400 a year. How does that work? Right? Because if the landlord has a 100 unit apartment and he's paying, let's just simple numbers, and he's paying $100,000 a year in property taxes, you divide that 100,000, divide it by 100 units, right? And then you divide that by how many people are in that unit. Maybe it's a 2-bedroom apartment or something like that. So what is that renter paying? Who uses the services? The buildings or the people? I can't take my building to the library. I can go to the library, but I'm paying for the library from my house and from my business. Why do I get charged twice to use a library I've never set foot in? I love books, but I don't go to the library.
Right.
So, but you think about these renters, think about this too. And I'm not disparaging renters. We all start, at a certain point in life, hoping maybe for home ownership. But think about some of the millages on your property tax bill. I have some that are 15 and 20-year millages. Think about this. You have a renter that moves into your area, takes a job. He's a renter, mind you, so he's not as stable as a homeowner, right? Because a homeowner buys a house, they invest themselves into the community. Their kids go to school, they go to church there, they might have a job there. They're invested because they bought a house. They're more stable, right? A renter might say, "Hey, I'm going to rent here because I can afford $1,200 in rent, so I'm going to live here." As soon as the rent goes up, they move over here. Right? So maybe they move out of the township they were in and they move into another township or a different county. But while they were in your township, they voted on a 15-year millage. and then the next month they move.
Right.
Didn't they agree? Didn't they kind of sort of agree to pay that 15-year millage? But now they're gone. So they
agreed for you to pay the 15-year millage.
They saddled you with it, right? I had a conversation with somebody and they said, "Karla, what are these millages really?" And I said, I want you to think about it this way, because we know that the penalty for not paying your property tax is the loss of your property. That is a very severe penalty, is it not?
Yeah.
Very severe. Yeah. But think about this. When you go and vote yes on a millage, you just kind of signed a tiny little contract. You kind of signed a contract that said, I will collateralize my house or my property to pay for that millage. And when you can no longer afford the property tax bill that has those millages on it, they come and take your house. Because you voted yes, you signed an imaginary contract. I agree to pay for that. I'm going to vote yes on that millage, which means I agree to pay that millage, and I'll collateralize my house for that millage. That's what you're doing. You're signing your property away when you vote yes on a millage, and I say this to people, show me the book in the library that's worth someone losing their home. There's not one. Is there?
What has the opposition looked like? I mean, this is something that, when you do upset apple carts, the apple salesman's going to have a problem with you. When you start talking about taking money from the king is going to send for you. What has the government side of the opposition looked like since you've been talking about these things?
Well, right. Interesting. The first time, because this we're going to start collecting signatures again April 1. We tried this before.
Yeah.
And we only had 135 days. We're supposed to have 180. And I feel like this was part of the government. This is what the government did to us. We're allowed to petition, right? Is that not one of our rights, to protest and petition? We have that right. We went to the board of, there's a process. This is a citizens initiative petition to change the Constitution. It's a constitutional amendment. We had to go in front of a group called the Board of Canvassers or Board of Electors.
Canvassers.
There's 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and then the director. You have to go in front of them with your petition and ask for their approval of a 100-word summary that summarizes the petition.
Yeah.
Okay, we started that in August of 2023, I believe, the first time around. Yes. So,
trying to make last year's ballot.
Yes. I don't think they wanted us. They did not want us on the November 2024 ballot with Trump. They just did not want us on a presidential ballot. So
what makes you think that?
Because you would get more turnout. And so what they did was they sandbagged us for 7 months. We went in August. We went in September, October, November, December. They wouldn't even put us on the agenda. They kept us off the agenda. They wouldn't approve our summary. And the summary, we first send in a summary that we write saying, here's our petition, here's the language, here's what we want our petition to do, here's a summary that we think summarizes it. The director, if he doesn't like our summary, if he thinks it's too one-sided, he gets to write it. Mm-hmm. Well, he wrote it. He wrote one in September, October, November, couldn't get the board to approve. December, they didn't have us on the agenda. We went back in January, didn't get their approval. They wanted us to come back in February, and I said, no, because now they've eaten so far into our circulating time. Right. I said, thank you. It is not necessary for us to get your approval. We're never going to get your approval. There was 2 Democrat attorneys that lived in that room, and they were fighting us all along the way. They did not want this on. I think they were just trying to we'll bleed her to death, right?
Yes.
She's paying.
Was Mark Brewer one of them?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And Mr. Lytle, whatever is Lytle.
Oh, yeah.
So in December, when we weren't allowed to be on the agenda, Mr. Lytle took it upon himself to make a podcast. And he sent that podcast to all of the municipalities, townships, and counties, telling them how awful the Axe My Tax petition was going to be for them, the municipalities, the township officials, the county commissioners. This wacky lady is going to take all your money away. What are you going to do, right? He never addressed how devastating property taxes are to the people, to the farmers, to the business owners, and to the state of Michigan. It's bleeding us dry, right? We have so many people, so many businesses leaving Michigan because they cannot afford to do business here. Correct? Right. So so when we lose businesses and we lose people, we lose revenue. The state loses corporate business tax. We use use tax. We lose state income tax revenue. We lose sales tax revenue. All of this other revenue is gone Why do you think Governor Whitmer's raising taxes? Because she's got to replace what we've lost because she's driven people. You never get more business by raising prices. You put things on sale. If you want to move something, you put it on sale.
Right.
And what she has done is taken so much of our taxpayer dollars. She pays foreign entities to come to Michigan to set up shop, and then she forgives them property tax. She'll say, oh, you don't have to pay property tax for 30 years.
30 years.
30 years. 30 or some will never pay.
So you can't, be derelict on yours.
Oh, right.
But this big company that's going to come in and bring these good paying jobs and more importantly give Gretchen Whitmer a headline that says so.
Absolutely.
30-year exemption.
Absolutely.
I thought we were all in this together.
Well, you
exemptions indicate we're not all in this together, and it also, I mean, as you make this argument, you can't very well say that I need to pay it, but a big corporation doesn't need to pay it.
Well, and my thing is
that doesn't make sense.
And we want to get rid of corporate favoritism, you level the playing field.
Yeah.
It's either everybody does or everybody doesn't. And I'm going with the premise that if we don't have property taxes here in Michigan, we will have businesses coming back. Businesses will come to Michigan because there's no property tax. People will come to Michigan because there's no property tax and there's jobs, our state income tax buckets, our sales tax bucket, all of those buckets that are losing money right now, that money is pouring out of, like you tip the bucket upside down, those buckets will start gaining more money. And when the people prosper, the state will prosper. Isn't that how it's supposed to be? When we make more money, we spend more money, which generates money for the state. That's how it should be. We generate money for our townships. We generate money for our counties in the form of sales tax, state income tax,
like
use tax,
actual economic activity.
Absolutely.
Not just reaching into my pocket as a homeowner.
Making me poorer and poorer. We need to generate income, not suck it all out of us. That's what they're doing right now. They're sucking. They are literally taxing us to death. That's what's happening.
So those lawyers, the Brewer and Lido, did you get the sense that they were retained by some kind of government association?
Yeah, they said that they were working for a group called Citizens for Public Safety or something like that. I don't know.
What?
Yeah, but
Citizens for Public Safety?
I would say, aren't you more safe in your house than living in your car? I mean, I'm thinking, if you're concerned about public safety, why wouldn't you want people locked? Let them have their house. Aren't we?
Mark Brewer is many things, but he is not cheap. And so if he's there, someone paid for him to be there. So that looks like the official pushback.
Yes.
Has there been also a popular pushback that, as you explain this to people, as they hear about it and you hear them talk about it, maybe they don't even know you,
right,
but where they're very negative on it. Has there been any popular pushback?
Well, I think and again, it's the pushback lessens as we educate, right? Because I have gone around the state. I have done so many presentations in almost every single county. There's 83 counties. I think I've been in 78 counties.
Yeah.
People that come to my presentations are mostly 40 to 80 years old. That's my largest audience. They don't understand their property tax bill. They don't, even though they're paying it and they've been paying it, they don't understand, hey, what does all this mean? So I bring my own tax returns to my presentations, not tax returns, my property tax bills. Right. I hand them out. And I'm like, this is what we're going to look at. These are mine. Now, when you go home, I want you to look at yours differently, in a different light, because we have to educate people. Why do you have your public school districts millages on your property tax bill? People go, oh, that's for the kids. No, it's not. Those public school millages has nothing to do with the education of your kids. It's for buildings, building maintenance, football fields, and
They
playground
actually
equipment.
can't use it just for education.
Exactly.
Because that comes from
The
Proposal A
state.
and property tax money, and so
That's at the
everyone's supposed to
state
be given the
level.
same amount of money to educate kids, but then the locals could throw in on, say, we want to improve the computers, or we want to
Yes.
build sports facilities.
We
And that,
need new
yeah,
playground.
it's an add-on, but it was never that these school millages were supposed to cover the basics. That in fact they can't.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, because most people do not understand that. They think that those local school millages are for the education of the kids. No, that is the state education tax, which is also on your property tax bill. It's 6 mils. It's 6 mils to everyone, but
Mm-hmm.
it's only called state education tax. That's the money that goes into the public school bucket in
Right.
Lansing. That's where they divvy up the money per child, that portion. Listen to this, James. The public school bucket is over $20 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Only 2.7 of that, 2.7 billion, goes to the state as property tax from your property tax bill. All across the state, only 2.7 billion comes from your property tax to the state to go into that $20 billion
Mm-hmm.
bucket. So where in the heck does the other 17.3 billion come from? All the other taxes you pay. Corporate business tax, use tax, state income tax, sales tax, alcohol, marijuana, tobacco tax, the lottery. It all funds the schools. So at the state level, public school attendance has dropped by more than 15%. What is 15% of 20 billion? $3 billion. What did I say? How much does the state get from your property tax? 2.7.
Mm.
Isn't that a wash? Get rid of it. That public school bucket should be able to be lessened by 15% because we've lost 15% of our attendance. 15% of 20 billion is 3 billion. How much of your property tax bill goes to the state for schools? 2.7 billion. Get rid of it. At the state level, the state is going to be hurt the least. Right? But we're going to take money. We want to take property tax from the state and say no more property tax at the state level. No more property tax at the township level. No more property tax at the county level. Because no government entity should be able to take the house or the farm or the business that you have paid for. Correct?
Yeah.
So,
Your movement just got a huge boost recently. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is probably the highest profile politician in American history to speak of eliminating the property tax. And this is a big major state. It's an important state. It's a red state. And Ron DeSantis is talking about this. We're going into 2026, going into 2028. He's using political capital to talk about this and lending a very powerful voice to your movement. What has been the DeSantis effect ever since you got that high profile cosign?
and to be honest with you, James, I don't know because I'm not. He came out and talked about the elimination of property tax, but then I feel like he took a step back and said at the state level, we can probably do it. But the counties, because see, the counties are the benefit of most of the money, right? So then now, by doing what he did, he could say, okay, the state at the state level, just like I said, at our state level, totally get rid of property tax. They wouldn't even feel it, right? 2.7 billion. And what are we spending at our state level right now? 83 billion. It is literally a drop in the bucket. The state won't miss it. The counties, however, they have a bigger portion of your property tax, but think about what it is that we pay the counties for. Zoos, museums, libraries, maybe the transit system if you live in an area where there's transit. Are those essential services? Are those essential services? No. Could they be paid by consumption? Absolutely. If I didn't have to pay $7,000 a year in property tax, would I be willing to buy a library membership for $150? Absolutely, if I so choose, right? If I wanted to go to the zoo, I would pay a little bit more to go to the zoo,
Right.
because right now I'm paying for the zoo on my property tax bill, and I have to pay when I go. That's nuts. Why don't they just charge admission? Raise admission a little bit and cover yourself, or go seek donors. Why are property tax payers paying for the zoo? Why are we
Right. What
paying
does
for
that have to do
museum?
with me?
Exactly. It's not an essential government service.
And we don't get money from the zoo. You know what I mean? It's not like, hey, you know, we made this much revenues, and so everyone's going to get a check, or here's how much less your bill's going to be.
It's not safety.
How about if I want to patronize the zoo, I go to the zoo.
You pay to go to the zoo. You pay admission. But why is it on our property tax bills, right? So they don't care if they make money or lose money. They don't have to operate in the black. They can operate in the red because they have all these wonderful taxpayers footing the bill. So
unfortunately, things moved in the opposite direction last decade with the grand bargain and the Detroit bankruptcy, where not only do people in Oakland County, where I live, pay for the DIA, in Macomb County also, but now everyone in Michigan got to throw in so the DIA wouldn't lose its art. And so everyone in Michigan became invested in these should-be private institutions in Detroit because of a bankruptcy. And so literally, you could do everything right, and your neighbors or other communities in the state could then take money out of your pocket by mismanaging themselves.
Well, and look at what Governor Whitmer at one time had, a $9 billion excess. Where did it all go?
To start 2023.
And where did it all go?
Ago.
She gave
2 years ago.
She gave $3 billion of it to foreign entities to come here, and then forgave them property tax. And then she very quickly, we built a $1 million splash pad in Ann Arbor. The state did. The state taxpayer, the taxpayer dollars from all of us. I'm sorry, I live in Rockford. I'm not going to go to Ann Arbor to use the splash pad. Why am I paying for it? We built an equestrian center in Detroit. We spent $20 million supposedly on Greektown development. We built a curling facility in Grand Traverse. What the heck? Why fix the damn roads?
And they say, oh, you know, it helps grease the wheels in the budget. What I think people don't get in Lansing, because I've heard that even from some people I like, and what I think people don't get in Lansing is that, to me, and I know these people, but I'm also the representative of the 10 million. They're not. You guys aren't the representative. We're the media. We're the representative of the 10 million because we're not paid to do that.
Well, but what you said about Governor DeSantis, I love the fact that they don't have state income tax. They already got rid of state income tax, right? So for him to get rid of property tax too, now he's got more revenue to try to figure it out. But just the fact that he's talking about it and looking into it, and he's listening to his constituents saying, we can't afford this anymore. Because look at what's happened to the insurance in Florida because of the hurricanes, right? He's listening to his people. That is the best thing. He's listening. Vivek Ramaswamy is running for governor of Ohio. Vivek had also touched on property taxes, right?
Yeah.
President Trump, Elon Musk, they have also talked about property taxes. The wonderful governor in Nebraska, he cut his property taxes by 30% and said, we will cut the state's budget accordingly. So he cut it at the state level, right? So maybe the county, the townships and the counties might get a little bit less. What our proposal does, James, is we are trying to take money from the state and give it to our townships and our counties to help them recoup the revenue that they're going to lose. We're going to give them a bigger portion of the sales tax bucket. We're going to give them a portion of the state income tax bucket, which is the biggest bucket in Lansing, right? We're going to give them a portion of alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana, because where do we deal with those addictions? At the local level. So we are trying to replace some of the revenue that we know that the townships and the counties will lose. But there are townships in Michigan that have said to me, we don't even need property taxes to run our townships. We currently get enough in general revenue sharing of the sales tax bucket than what they spend. So maybe they're a more rural community, maybe they're more
Right.
fiscal, but it can be done. It can be done. That's what I
The point I
want.
was going to make about earmarks is that, as we talk about what to cut from Lansing, so we spend, Whitmer wants 83.5 billion.
Yeah.
About 1 billion,
Let's
a little
cut
bit
Whitmer.
more is earmarks. And those earmarks are those things you talked about, the splash pad here, the special project there. And those things, we talk about greasing the wheels in politics. We don't care whether you guys get along with each other in Lansing, and that's what that stuff's about. We have to pay for all of it.
It's called buying votes. It is
Yeah.
called buying votes. She is buying.
Which, getting enough votes for your plan is your problem.
Exactly.
I don't see why it has to involve my money as a taxpayer.
In my
And
house.
it's the same thing we do with corporate income or, with this corporate welfare. I get that you want X amount of jobs, but what does that have to do with me and my wallet? And that's the question nobody can answer.
Right. And I think the government spends and spends. It's like an endless credit card. Because it's like, oh, well, just turn around and tax the people more. If we just tax all these
and this
people
is even
a little
at
bit
the state level. We know in Washington that they're messed up. But the reason why they're messed up in Washington is because they have access to a money printer.
Yes.
And they believe that they can just print endless amounts of money and it doesn't matter what they do. You would think that we would know better in Michigan. But even I remember with like Ann Arbor schools, Wayne Westland schools, after all that stimulus money from Biden, they would then say, oh, we're still broke 2 years, 3 years later, because their idea was that they were going to play chicken and they were going to, people were going to get so used to seeing this money spent that no politician could ever roll it back. So that was just going to get put onto our tab as taxpayers for the state. That was always their game. So there's just an irresponsible mindset, whether it's Washington or Lansing or your township government, about who this money comes from and what it should be spent on.
Yeah. People are starting to see the waste that is being discovered.
Yeah.
At the federal level, the Doge, and I don't know, not everybody agrees with me or likes it that I make this statement, but I said, Axe My Tax is the beginning of Doge in Michigan, because what are we doing? We're sending less money. We're sending less money to every level of government. We want them to reappropriate the money they do get and put it to essential services first. Because what do they do, James? What does the federal government do? If the federal government shuts down, your Social Security checks and your VA checks aren't going to be sent out. Really?
Oh, that's the first stuff that they'll mess up.
They always go for the jugular first, right?
Washington Monument Syndrome, we call it, where a shutdown happens and the next day Washington Monument's closed.
Yeah.
Because the point is malicious compliance that makes everyone think we have to go back to old normal.
Yeah. So they do that here at our local level. The townships and the counties go, well, if you get rid of property tax, you're going to lose your police and fire. And I said, well, how about we keep the police and fire and we get rid of the pickleball court and the walking trail?
Right.
Right? Are you going to tell me?
Karla, you were taking on an old normal, not just in Michigan, but in America. I mean, our property tax, if you think about it, the property tax is really the last vestige of our British heritage in America. The idea that the king ultimately owns the land and that you don't own it and you pay rent to the king. Is it Stockholm syndrome that explains that when you start saying, hey, let's get rid of this property tax, stop rendering under the king, keep your money, and lose the biggest threat to your home, that when presented with that people still ask, will the government be okay?
Yeah, I know. You know what? Thank you
to ask that.
Thank you for understanding what the Stockholm syndrome is, because I think there's a lot of people out there that don't even understand. You know what, James? It comes down to this. We are a good society. We are responsible people. But you know what? The penalty for not paying your property tax is so severe
Yeah.
that they feel, oh my gosh, if we don't pay it, the sky is going to fall. The earth is going to disintegrate, right? Because we have been taught that property taxes are so damn important.
It's the lifeblood
You got to
of
pay it.
communities.
And it's for the kids, and it's for your veterans, and it's for your seniors. Well, you know what? I'll tell you what, James. In Kent County, where I live, I have a senior millage. I have a veteran millage. I have a early childhood development millage on my property tax bill, but every single one of them have 31 downtown development authorities sucking up that money that I am thinking I'm giving it to my seniors. I'm giving money to my veterans. I'm giving money to little kids. And yet there's 31 downtown development authorities that are attached to each one of those millages. They get a ton of that money. The seniors, the veterans, and the children get much smaller portion of that. They don't tell you that. They expect you to educate yourself, read the proposal. But all of those pretty little postcards they send out, vote yes for this, vote yes for that, has none of that language on there. None of that language, because they know we won't go and look. They know that in our hearts, we are bleeding hearts. Who would not give to your veterans? Who would not give to your seniors? Who would not want to educate little kids?
It assumes a high trust society that has a high trust, not just in each other, but in their government. And I think that's a thing that's changed big time since 2020, especially when those same governments would send people after you if you tried to keep your business open so as to be able to pay them taxes.
You know what? I had a dozer. I had a ground moving bulldozer sitting on 34 vacant acres. The guy's in a dozer in a cap during COVID, and somebody called the police, and the police went and escorted him off that property.
Unreal.
He was not even allowed to push dirt.
Unreal.
But man, pay your property taxes or we're going to come and take that dirt away from you. Our farmers are having to sell to the state, to the solar farms, to the wind turbines. They have to, because James, think about it. If you have a 500-acre farm, if you have 1,000 that you've accumulated over many, many years and many generations, some of these farmers are 4th and 5th generation farmers here in Michigan. If you've accumulated 500 acres, 1,000 acres, the state comes to you and says, you better sell to us, because when you go to sell that property and the value is uncapped, who's going to afford the property taxes? No one's going to be able to afford the property taxes. So let the state buy it from you with the taxpayers' dollars, and we'll build a solar farm there. Do you know what Frito-Lay, the Frito-Lay company, just came out and said?
What?
Frito-Lay said, we will not buy potatoes grown on any land that is under, near, or has been a solar farm because of the contamination of the soil. So we have a lot of potato farmers here in Michigan. We have a lot of potato farmers here.
And when you look at the compromised economics of it, people are going to feel like they don't have any choice. I better sell that lease and bring in these solar arrays, which is going to taint your ability to go on as a farm. Now you're in the solar business and you're not going to be a farmer in 20 years.
No, you're not going to be. And you know what? And you're not going to be a farmer anymore. They're selling their land, and a lot of them are selling. They're selling to the state. We all saw up in, was it Grayling, 400 acres? You saw the thing with Gretchen out there with the axe cutting down trees because they were cutting down trees. Okay, this is the new Green Deal. Let's cut down trees that clean the air of carbon dioxide, right, through photosynthesis. Let's cut down trees to build a solar farm. Does that sound green? That doesn't sound green to me.
When you say it out loud, it sounds absolutely insane, which just tells me that they're not doing it for environmental reasons.
And look,
that's their cat's paw.
And what's happening now, James? You saw our governor pay pay companies tied to EV, right? EV lithium batteries, EV cars, EV this. She paid them to come into Michigan because Biden was president and they were all pushing the new Green Deal, right? So let's pay all of this money. Let's invite all of these companies into Michigan. Let's kill our farmland. Let's sell it off. Now that Mr. Trump is president and he's pushing back on all this, we are those EV companies are taking our money and they're moving out of state. They're taking the money that she paid them.
I'd rather them not come, but
I know,
I would rather
me too.
them not have been given the money in
Give
the
us
first
the money.
place.
Yeah, pay the money back.
And that's the thing. It's
Pay the money
it's
back.
so embarrassing to watch someone like Gretchen Whitmer, the girl who got drunk in high school and passed out in her school's parking lot, act like she's some kind of businesswoman. And just the arrogance of picking winners and losers in general. The idea that Lansing or people in Lansing can centrally say, this is what we need, this is what we don't need. This type of worker is essential.
And
this type of worker is non-essential. Tell me what that was like, because as a news reporter, we certainly think of ourselves as essential. But I remember during COVID, I mean, we were literally had to be sent a freaking permission slip to be able to leave the house if a cop pulled you over. So what was it like to be on the other side and be told the work you do that supports your family is non-essential?
Yeah. Well, you know what? It kind of sucks. It seriously sucks. At first you go, woohoo, vacation, because it was 2 weeks. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And then it turned into much longer than that. But this is what people have forgotten. During COVID, the state of Michigan paid out 8 to 15, 8 to 15. It's like 8 to 19, 8 to 15 billion dollars in fraudulent unemployment claims. Can you imagine having that much extra cash? That 8 to 15 billion were paid out fraudulently. And guess what? I got a letter because I own a business that pays unemployment insurance. I got a letter saying, well, because the unemployment bucket is now empty, businesses are going to have to contribute more. I'm
like a special assessment?
But it's not empty because of anything I did. You didn't do your due diligence.
You're the one who did lockdowns. You're the one who told us to stay home.
They locked us down, and then the government is an equal opportunity employer. They are not hiring the cream of the crop, and I'm sorry if that offends people.
They're really not.
I try calling Lansing. I try talking to people. They don't speak my language, and when you're trying to something as complicated as what state tax returns can be, K-1s, all of this stuff, and then you're talking to someone, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't get through to someone. I'm trying to tell them something and I can't get an answer. I can't make what I'm saying make sense to them because I know more than what they do about this issue. But
I think the headline here is that you actually reached someone. I never heard a voice during the pandemic.
Well, and you know what? Here's the other thing. Not only did we pay out all of that fraudulent unemployment claims, but recently you saw, and then they extended unemployment. They started paying ungodly amounts, right? Okay. So then when we went back to work, we couldn't find any workers because now I'm in competition with my government for labor. Right. And look at what they just did. I don't know if this went through.
A lot of people made more money during COVID than they were making before COVID.
Oh my goodness.
So the government throws a rock into the employment market.
You know what happened? I did a tax return for a young man. He was in school. He was working at Ace Hardware, okay, part-time while he was in school. He claimed and he got unemployment. By the time he filed his tax return the next year, guess what? Do you think he didn't have taxes withheld from his unemployment check? So he went and he spent all of that money. Next year when he filed his income tax return, He owed
Gruesome.
like $4,000. Do you think that 18-year-old kid had $4,000 laying around to pay his income tax? No.
That's bad. That's bad.
Because he was only part-time, but he got all of this money. It's ridiculous. But you think about what just happened with the raise the wage. Okay? Raise the wage. They're going to force, and it hits restaurants. So I'm a little restaurant. So it hits us hard, right? Because they're saying you have to pay the lowest man on the totem pole $15 an hour by 2027. Well, if I have to pay him 15, I have to raise the wage of everybody above him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my payroll just went like this. My payroll expenses, because of the taxes I have to match, just went like this. My unemployment just went like this. My workers' comp just went like this. So now, what do I have to do? I have to raise the prices of all of the food on my menu. So how does that impact you? You don't want to come and eat at my place anymore because it's too expensive, right? So I'm going to go out of business either because I have no customers due to high prices, or I'm just going to have to say, I can't make it. I can't make it, and I'm going to shut the door.
The government is actively your enemy as you seek prosperity in Michigan.
And yes, and you know what? I think what they just did was because they knew that raise the wage law was coming, because they knew 50 to 60,000 people in the state of Michigan are going to lose their jobs, they extended again the time, the time that you can collect unemployment. And they raised it from like $312 a week up to $600 a week. Again, I'm in competition with my own government because, and why, James? Why? Because they don't want small business owners. They want everybody. It's like, you're going to make $600 a week. Every person in the state of Michigan is going to make $600 a week. There will be no jobs. There will be no small businesses. This is your stipend for being a resident of Michigan. And guess what? When you rent from the government in a government-owned or government-subsidized apartment, because that's all you're going to afford, guess how much rent is going to be? $2,399 a month. And you're going to get $2,400 a month because you're going to get 600 times 4.
Right.
You're going to get paid $2,400. You're going to pay rent of $2,399. You're going to have $1 left for yourself because they're so generous. That is what is going on, and people aren't paying attention. So the Axe My Tax really came from so many different reasons. If we do not own property, we are toast. We are nothing. If I don't own land, I can't have a garden to feed myself. And I'm afraid that if I don't own a house, pretty soon my Second Amendment right's going to go away.
Oh, easily.
Right? Because they're going to say,
if you think you're going to be able to own a gun or smoke pot in your house or do whatever you want,
and the government's
they're
house,
going to make it so that you can't.
In the government's house, because the government's going to own that house, and you're renting from them, and they can change the laws anytime they want, as they have already proven. They can come and do whatever. There's a city manager in Muskegon who wants to write an ordinance that would allow him entry into your private home to check the infrastructure to make sure it's safe and to check the water or whatever. I look at that and I go, red flag law, because he's going to enter into your house.
Absolutely.
Saying, I'm checking your roof, I'm checking your basement, I'm checking your windows. Oh my gosh, you have a varmint rifle behind your bedroom door, unsecured.
Bingo.
Bingo.
Karla, let me get you out of here with this one.
Okay.
You've been more than generous.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. There's so much.
How will you go about, these changing the Constitution in Michigan is not cheap. And then you also are going to need about 450,000 signatures. How much money will this all take? How will you make it happen?
Aye. You know what?
Yeah.
We need as much money as we can. We already have money set aside for the petitions. We've already bought 50,000 petitions. We need 100,000. We need 100,000 petitions to get 1 million signatures, but not everybody fills the page. So on April, right now, what I'm doing is I'm pushing the petitions out across the state. We're going to start circulating on April 1. We have 180 days. We want 600,000 signatures because you're correct. We need like 467,277, some odd number. It's a formula based on how many people voted in the last gubernatorial race. Our goal is 600,000. We have to collect that in 180 days. Okay, so we need a lot of circulators. We need a lot of people signing up to help us circulate petitions. I'm not even going to tell you how little money we raised, because I've had people tell me it's going to cost $10 to $70 million to get this across the finish line.
Oh, yeah.
And I just go, okay, I don't have that kind of money. Grassroots people don't have that kind of money. The people you're bleeding.
Well, this is why no one has the money, because
so we
they're paying so much in property taxes.
I just tell people, you know what? If God put me on this path, he put me on this path for his reason and his reason only, whether it is to educate people, or to get this done, whatever it's going to be. He is going to provide what I need to get this done. That I have to believe in that.
Sometimes your role is to move the Overton window.
Yes.
And to even start a discussion. It took many decades of talk about making Michigan a right-to-work state. When I was at Mackinac Center, they said that at one point, supporters would even ask the organization to stop talking about right-to-work, because to continue talking about it and not do it would send the wrong message.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's not, knife is not just scoreboards. It's also trajectories. It's also Overton windows. There's a lot of ways to measure a win. Karla, where can people learn more about yourself and Axe My Tax?
I was just at the Mackinac Center yesterday. They sent me home with a ton of literature,
Yes.
which I will read, because I follow them too.
Very fine people at the Mackinac Center.
Our website is AXMI, so Axe, MI for Michigan.
It's AXE, right?
No, AX.
It's AX?
AX, just AX.
No AXE?
No, it used to be AXE.
I identified it as having an E.
That's okay, because we used to, when we were just like educating people. But once we turned into a citizens initiative petition, we had to differentiate, because it's a 501c, 501c4, or a 501c3. We had to differentiate. So we just dropped the E. So because it sounds the same, right? It sounds the same. So it's AXMITAX.org. And that's the website. It's got a ton of information on it. People can go there. There's a volunteer form. They can fill out that volunteer form to help us circulate this. I want circulators in every county. I want people to use their vote and their voice to say, we're done. We've had enough. We can't afford anymore. The people that can afford millages, that say, I don't mind paying my share. You got to think about your neighbors, the young couple here, the old couple here that can't afford it. So please, just because you can afford it, don't be selfish. Think about these people. They might not be able to afford it. Think about them and what it's going to do to them if you vote yes on another millage. And you know what? Those millages are 5 years, then they're 15 years, then they're 30 years, and they just keep going up and up and up. And people, so we have made an impact on turning millages down. Monroe Community College got it turned down. Jackson County Sheriff, their millage was turned down. School millages are getting turned down. All I'm trying to tell these entities is, if you leave it up to us, if you leave it up to the natives to keep voting yes, pretty soon we're going to wise up and say, no more, vote no. And then where are they going to get their revenue from? Because they're looking at it thinking, by the grace of God, we're going to continue to be stupid. And instead, they better say, maybe we can take it from some of these other taxes, right?
Right.
If the state would spend less and push some of those taxes we already pay back down to the local level, we'll be fine. Provide me essential services only. Police, fire, county roads. That's all I ask of you. I will provide my own entertainment. I will do what I want to do to keep my household happy and maintained. Please let me do that. But axmytax.org, We need circulators. We're going to start circulating April 1. I will tell you that the amount of money we raised would make people literally cry. So we do need donations. They can donate at that spot, but it's not going to stop us. Our bills are paid. Our bills are paid, and we're going to keep going. The more money we get, the more exposure we get, right? We can do billboards,
Absolutely.
we could do flyers, we could do stuff like that
Yeah.
to make sure. The hard part is going to be when we get the signatures to get it on the ballot. That's when those opposing groups are really going to come after us. That's when we're really going to have to start fighting whatever they're going to say. Oh, you'll have no more police. Oh, you'll have no more fire. Oh, the schools will close.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
when we're really going to need to do it. But yeah, please, circulators right now. I need circulators more than I need money, but I'll take both. We need both.
Absolutely. Karla, thank you so much for taking the time. This is a great discussion. I think it's going to open a lot of people's eyes.
I hope it does, because more than anything, it's the lack of education. We've become so misinformed and uninformed, apathetic. Unfortunately, people need to go to their township meetings. They know that they need to go to their county meetings. Those are easy. It's much harder to get into Lansing. But what I will tell you, everyone, please email and call your state rep and your senator every day, and say, if you don't support the elimination of taxes and the ability for me to maintain private ownership of my property, then we won't support you. Expect to get primaried. We will find somebody that will support what the people want, not what the lobbyists in Lansing want, not what our governor wants. Got to save our state, and we can't save our state until we save ourselves.
Absolutely.
Bless you for having me on. I love it.
Be blessed, Karla. I really appreciate this, and I will talk to you very soon.
You are a fun host because you know what you're talking about. This is easy because you know what you're talking about. Thank you so much.
I think guests make shows, but that's just me.
A good host.
Thank you, Karla.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.